Before we get started, my brother's car exploded. Help me replace it with the Give Send Go link down in the description. Thanks, guys. Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? This is my review of Shiloh by Shelby Foote. Not to be confused with, I don't even know the name of the other author, but if you went to elementary school in America in the 90s or 2000s maybe, there was a story about a beagle named Shiloh. This kid was like trying to get the dog and raise it. This is not that. This is about the Battle of Shiloh from the Civil War in 1862. And Shelby Foote is a well-known historian of the Civil War. In fact, I'm kind of new to looking into his oeuvre. I was able to recently acquire an audio copy of, I think it's like volume 1 of a couple of volumes of his perspective on the Civil War, like the analysis that he has done. Just that first volume in audio is 40 plus hours. So, woo damn, this dude's got a lot to say. What I found appealing about Shiloh was that the print book is only about 220 pages or so, and the audiobook was only around 5 hours, which worked just fine for me. Like, I wanted to get a feel for his writing style, his tone, things like that. This book is only 7 chapters long, and mostly it rotates perspectives between Union soldiers and Confederate soldiers. The characters that he creates are just made up from whole cloth, but they cross paths with actual historical figures. And he says in a afterword that any dialogue or anything that comes from those figures is stuff that they are actually recorded to have said. He apparently is a big stickler for details when it comes to writing historical fiction, and especially about the Civil War. There was a pretty good bibliography at the end of the book as well, talking about the original sources that he drew on, letters, reports to officers and such after the war, to the point where we even had a pretty good idea of what the weather was like every single day. The story kind of starts like right before the Battle of Shiloh, and then when it jumps between a Union soldier and a Southern soldier, what they call them, feds and corn feds, we just get a glimpse of like the different parts of the country that these guys were from, what their background was, how they ended up in the military, and what they expected to get out of their service. Right now, anybody who goes into the military is going to be surrounded by veterans of the 20-year global war on terror. And that's going to really color the experience and the service records of people in the armed services right now. For context, in the Civil War, most of the military experience amongst the veterans was in the Mexican-American War and also the westward expansion, so various Indian wars. And he works those details in there. Details about what field medicine was like, amputations, things of that nature. Like it's all there, and it feels like, based on what I've already read, a pretty accurate depiction of day-to-day life in the military as things are tightening up and winding up towards an explosive armed conflict. That's really all that I want to say about it. The narrative was great. The prose, that's the word I'm looking for, was really, really beautiful, and it felt very immersive. It had that quality. He also wasn't like playing favorites or anything. It wasn't like he was portraying like the Unions as the Union was the unqualified hero and the South was the unqualified villain. Like, yes, obviously both sides saw themselves as in the right. He was just getting in the mindset of a Northerner and a Southerner and then writing their perspective. And I appreciate that in historical writing. It gives me greater confidence going into his nonfiction, knowing that he's going to approach it with a fair and even hand. We operate in a society where social capital is extremely valuable, and you obtain it and you maintain it kind of vocally, externally. This is why people with large social media followings and social media interaction, we esteem them for the most part to be of larger social value because, well, the herd mentality says that they are worthy of our approbation. Well, it seems like one of the easiest ways for people to try to reach for social capital in the 21st century in America is to use the Confederacy as its punching bag. Oh, I'm a good person. I hate the Confederacy because they were pro-slavery. An actual understanding of the circumstances in America around the time of the Civil War and then how they changed from the beginning of the war to the end really runs counter to the massive, massive oversimplification that is to say, oh, the South had slaves and the North wanted to take them away. Slavery was a core issue. It was not the core issue. It was self-governance. Yes, it was over the issue of slavery. You could also sub out slavery and replace it with any other issue, and if the North had decided to set its eyes on that and the South said, no, we want to keep our way of life, whether it was something morally neutral, morally right, or in the case of slavery, morally wrong and antithetical to the principles of liberty, they would have still rebelled. Largely, the rebellion was in response to Lincoln's election, which that election was unique amongst the history of American presidential elections. But that's something else that I would need to talk about in another video, which is why I'm doing the presidential election cartoon book. Anyway, the point is, in 1861, when things really kicked off, the Northern military, which was more numerous, better funded, better supplied, and all of that good stuff, it really should have had no problem mogging and manhandling the South. And the only reason that they went to war to do so was to stop the rebellion and the secession. They didn't give a damn about slavery or black citizenship or any of that stuff. That didn't come along until past the halfway point of the war, when Lincoln himself underwent a bit of a spiritual transformation and decided to put emancipation on the table. There were other factors involved in that, but it's not so simple as like, oh, well, the South was racist and owned slaves, and the North was good and didn't, so they decided to go down south and free the slaves. It is significantly more complex than that. And anybody who lifts up the Confederacy of the 1860s to use as a punching bag, be aware that this is more often than not in our day a manipulation tactic to increase their own social capital and say, I am good because I hate this thing because they did the slavery. Go look up some old Abe Lincoln quotes about what he thought about the interminglability of blacks and whites. Oh boy. Anyway, I'm interested in reading nonfiction about the Civil War that takes this very unbiased approach, or maybe even slightly apologetic towards the South, just to really try to get into the mindset of the secessionists. They couldn't achieve as much as they did, motivated by pure hatred towards black people and pure love of their own riches or anything. There had to be more to it, and the more you read about it, the more you'll see that there is more to it than that. As for this book in particular about Shiloh, it's a good, quick introduction to Shelby Foote's writing style and his focus and his characters. Not that his nonfiction is going to be about characters so much, but that the man knows this time period and the factors around it very well, and in my opinion, that makes it worth reading. I didn't really track the names of all the characters. I know there was a Metcalf, there were others, just because it was bouncing between, like I said, a Northerner and a Southerner, a Union guy and a Confederate. But you're able to tell both from the the accent of the audiobook narrator, as well as just kind of like the tone and certain pieces of vocabulary amongst of the writer. Who's who and what's when and all of that. So a very easy read. I gave it a comfortable 4 stars. Didn't need any halves or rounding up or anything. But that's an endorsement for Shiloh by Shelby Foote. 3 years ago, when I went to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I stopped by the National Civil War Museum, and in their gift shop, they had 4 comic books, these Marvel comic books that were like comic versions of actual Civil War battles, so like comic book nonfiction. I bought them, and I still need to read them. But I think like one of them was definitely one of them was Gettysburg, and one of them was Antietam. I want to say one of them was Bull Run, and then maybe one of them was Shiloh. I can't remember all 4 of them, but I'll read those and report back later. For now, definitely check out Shiloh by Shelby Foote. Thanks, guys. Drive safe. See you out there.